This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a very windy day here in Djuma Game Reserve. We've came across a very endearing scene. Two large adult elephants having a nap. It's not just the cats that can nap. These animals can also have a little snooze. So everyone, buckle up. It's that time of day. Get ready for your live safari through the African bush. We are very glad you're jumping on board with us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and it's just such a lovely thing to watch these great big mammals taking a little snooze, making me feel sleepy. My name is Lauren, and I do have Craig on camera today, and we've just been watching them very, very quietly. They're nice and relaxed, and they're just taking a break from their very busy day of eating. So it's windy here, and normally on windy days, elephants are not so relaxed. So there's a chill in the air, at least here in Djuma Game Reserve. But we're coming to you from 5 different locations with 6 different safari vehicles. So I'm sure we'll be able to show you lots of different and exciting animals today. Look at them. They're really snoozing. Flapping their ears to cool down, but snoozing. So please do talk to us, everyone. This is live and interactive. You're welcome to send in any questions that you may have and comments. Don't forget the comments. And it's #WildEarth on Twitter and @FC on Twitch and the YouTube chat stream. But kids, you're also welcome to ask questions. You just need to email us, and the email address is kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. So I think I'm also going to put my feet up and enjoy watching these gorgeous elephants snooze for now.
From elephant to giraffe, we've just come down here to Vuyatela Dam and are admiring this beautiful dark male. He just had a drink to quench his thirst and is now staring into the distance. And let's go out and find what he's staring for. It could be anything out there this afternoon, and we're excited to find it. My name is David Hancock. On camera we have Theo, and we are going to be exploring Djuma this afternoon and maybe head back over to Simbambili and see if we can relocate that male lion that we had this morning. So all in all, an exciting afternoon, not too cold, nice and windy like Lauren says, so it takes a bit of the edge off the heat, and believe it or not, it is actually hot in the winter time here. I think it's about 23 Celsius today, so a lovely, cool winter's day in South Africa. Well, what a lovely way to start our sunset safari.
Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to And Beyond Ngala. We have got a really nice scene of some elephants who unfortunately are moving away from us at the moment. But we did want to stick around because there was a really small elephant that we wanted to show you. Unfortunately, it was moving away from us, but that is just the way that these safaris go. My name is Eric, and behind camera is Owen as always. There he is. So we can just see the back end of the herd over there, and we might just see it. These elephants have been toying with us. They were in the riverbed, but because there's not really any vegetation to feed on in the river, they crossed onto the bank. Samantha, that's a very good question, and I'm actually not entirely sure how much an elephant can carry. I mean, Asian elephants have been domesticated a lot more than African elephants can have, and I would imagine, I mean, I might be able to find out exactly how much an Asian elephant could carry. I don't know if I'll be able to tell you how much an African elephant would be able to carry on its back. But I'll definitely see if I can search around and read a few things and see if I can find out and give you an exact number. So now that they're crossing, let's see if the youngsters here, because it does look like this could be part of the group with the small ones. And all of a sudden they've just gotten up and they're moving quite quickly away from us. That might be a few of the bulls at the back end of the herd that are just playing around and running and chasing each other. And they'll always be at the back end of the herd because they are a lot bigger and they're very boisterous at this age, which means that they could cause damage to the youngsters. And so that's why I think they're at the back end of the herd.
I have two bulls here, very relaxed in one another's company, relaxed enough to just stand and snooze. And they're not sleeping the way that humans sleep. I mean, I put my head on that pillow and I am gone. I wouldn't even hear a fire alarm going off, but they're still very alert. So it's not deep REM sleep, it's very light resting. Elephants can sleep during the night, but they will also just take bouts of rest throughout the day, especially after feeding. If they've been feeding a lot, then of course they need to digest a little bit. And elephants are not very good digesters, believe it or not. They're bulk feeders. So they eat a lot, continuously eating, a bit like myself, but they're not very good at processing that internally. Their digestive process is not strong, and they're said to only digest about 40% of what they eat, and that means the other 60 comes out. Tobacco, very good question. I know these two elephants are boys because, well, they showed me their genitals, which are hard to miss, believe it or not. Large genitals, but there's quite a few tricks. Once you spend more time with elephants, you will see that adults, normally the females have very, very swollen mammary glands, and it's really hard to miss. Well, that's one sort of trick. The males will have nipples, but they'll not be very swollen and obvious. And the shape of the forehead is a really good indicator. Females have a really angular forehead. It's almost like a 90-degree sharp forehead. I'll try and see if we can find a female later to show you. And males have a very rounded, smooth forehead. It's not sharp. The other thing to look at is size. Males are much bigger than females. They're both large, of course, but there's quite a drastic size difference. I mean, bulls go up to about 3 meters in shoulder height, cows 2 to 2.5, and a bull can weigh up to 6 tons, whereas a cow will only really come in at about 4 tons. So those are the sort of key things to look at, but normally an adult male, sometimes when he's feeling a bit boisterous and he's full of testosterone, you will visibly see his genitals, which makes it easy. But their testicles are actually inside. We call this testconda, and it's a unique feature of only a few of the mammals out here, so it does make it hard to identify male and female elephants. Absolutely. It's really not easy. Hippos are the same. They're also included in the sort of testconda group. They're still sleeping. They must have had a long morning of eating, and now I'm jealous. But I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to sit tight and hopefully we can see them wake up and walk past the car. Isn't this just so endearing, everyone? It's actually been a very long time since I've came across elephants sleeping like this. Or not sleeping, probably we should say resting. Eyes closed. Normally they like to rest one leg, so they're balancing the weight, they're distributing the weight. We've got the whole herd behind us, but these two boys seem to, well, be enjoying their rest far more than keeping up with the herd. I'm just going to sit here and let you all enjoy these sleepy ellies. Our sleepyheads have still not moved. Imagine sleeping standing up. That does not appeal to me whatsoever, and yet they are doing it. So don't forget, everyone, if you want to send through any questions, this is a live safari, so we can answer them for you. And we're sitting here in Djuma Game Reserve watching these two huge bulls just rest. And yet they're still flapping their ears, and that's necessary because their ears are part of the thermoregulation process for an elephant. That's how they cool down, and it's also how they keep warm. Jackal, you're asking about elephant skin, and yes, it would feel very similar. Their skin is very unique and is dry to the touch. It's very rough. I've actually touched an Asian elephant before, and it would be similar to rhinos, but elephants would most likely be a lot more wrinklier. And this is intentional. They look like they need a good moisturizer, but actually the wrinkles are there to help them keep cool. So when it's very, very hot in summer here in Africa, they can actually hold in water or damp mud, and the skin is said to hold up to 5 to 10 times more water than on a flat surface. So there's wrinkles all over the body, and this helps the elephant keep cool. The skin is said to be about 4 centimeters thick. A rhino's skin is also very thick, so yes, Jackal, it would feel similar, but elephants are far more wrinklier. And they don't have sweat glands, so they can't just sweat and cool through evaporative cooling like we can. They have to flap those ears and find shade. Oh, I think someone's waking up. Here we go. So we're going to sit here and follow those boys and see what they get up to. Sorry about that. I don't know. I think Eric lost his voice. No, sometimes out here in the wild, we're filming wild animals in the bush. Technology wins. But we're back with our boy. He had a little stretch there, but I think he's still really sleepy. And look at those ears. They're said to be the shape of Africa. Completely different from Asian elephants. They have much smaller ears, and they're really not the shape of Africa. Very, very thin. Got cartilage at the top to allow for structure, to give the structure to the ears. But other than that, the ears are incredibly thin, almost paper thin. And that's because there's a network of blood vessels. And the ears are said to give out about 75% of the heat loss to elephants. So when they're trying to cool down, 75% of the heat that they lose is through the ears. That's how effective the ears really are. And they can actually weigh up to 20 kilograms each in some elephants. And the big bulls, 20 kilograms. I can't even lift that at the gym. I can barely even lift a quarter of that. But the ears in general constitute 20% of an elephant's body surface area, and that's why they're so effective at losing heat. Network of veins and capillaries, and they cover such a large surface area of the elephant's body. 20%, that's a fifth of the elephant's entire body, and that's why they're so effective. They act as massive satellite dishes. They can express their mood, and they help them cool down. So we're going to sit tight for now and watch these two beautiful sleepy boys.
So our elephants moved off and we didn't see them again, so we decided to carry on driving along the river. And we're just taking a slow drive, looking in all of the nice tall trees underneath the shade, just for any sign of any predators that we might be able to find. But ultimately, we are heading back into the direction of where those wild dogs were seen this morning and where we had them. And so hopefully they're still in exactly the same position. And so we're not too far. It will take us, if we drove straight there, it will take us about 15 minutes or so, but we'll take a nice slow drive and get there probably within about 30-40 minutes or so, depending on what we see along the way. And Samantha managed to just quickly have a look to see if I could find out how much an elephant can carry. And apparently it can carry around about 25% of its own body weight. By the looks of things, most of the studies that I was reading was directed at Asian elephants, just like I thought. So I'll see if I can find anything with regards to African elephants and see if I can figure it out and get an exact number for you there. We've got another 200-300 meters to go before we duck out of the riverbed onto the bank, and then we'll start heading towards those wild dogs. So stay with us.
Well, we are still on the tracks of this buffalo herd, and I think we are very close. Just bear with me for a second, I'm trying to get a vantage point. We've been tracking them through the block. We're about 1 kilometer from Vuyatela Dam, and I think they're just ahead because we went around the fire break, we didn't see them there. So they have to be in this block. I'm just trying to get a little bit of a vantage point here. Sometimes height really helps. And I think I see them. Oh, we got them there. Awesome. If you can get up past the height of the calves, then you will often succeed. Let's go get them. Something exciting about tracking and finding. Sorry, I'm out of breath because I've been off the vehicle, on the vehicle, running after these guys. But but they are right ahead of us. So what I did was, we got their tracks going into the block, and then we scoot all the way around, made sure they didn't come out the other side, so then that left only one option, and that was that they were in this block. And we proceeded to do a little follow-up on them, and now we have just come right, and I'm trying to find my cable.
I'm not climbing any trees, and neither are my two boys. They're still resting. But what's fascinating, when you look at this bull, look at the two tusks. Craig's going to give you a beautiful view. You can see they're not equal in length. They're not equal in size. And that's because, just like us, elephants prefer they're either right-handed or left-handed. You see that? You see how the left one is worn down much further? That's his master tusk. So that means that this bull prefers to use his left side, and that's why it's worn down so quickly. And tusks in elephants are just elongated incisors. Oh, someone's waking up and now we're hungry. So this bull definitely uses his left side much more than the right side, and that's why it's worn down so quickly. But they will apologies. That's why they continue to grow throughout their life. So although it's worn down, the tusks will continue to grow. And these ones are quite large, not as large as the big tuskers, but this is a much older bull. And they're putting on quite a show for us today. Craig and I are very lucky. We don't have to follow them. They're just staying still. So we're going to continue to stand and admire our beautiful bulls.
Welcome back. We found them. We found the buffalo herd. About 300 meters on from where we last were. I cheated a little bit and got a vantage point in a tree. Acting like a giraffe, they can see over everything, and it really does help sometimes, especially when you're following up on herd animals like buffalo, because they stand out like a sore thumb if you can get a vantage point. Also, not very difficult to track. Not only does the herd churn up the dirt, and hoof prints are very noticeable, but they also leave nice wet patties everywhere for you to follow. Sean, how can we tell the age of a buffalo? That's a good question. So, body size and condition often are telltale signs. You can quite readily see when a buffalo is very old on its way down. It starts getting very shallow in its hips and its spine starts to protrude. You can see it's losing condition, and then you know it's nearing the end of its life. To the top upper age that they reach, 30 to 40 years out here in the wild. And then from a juvenile to an adult, we also start looking at the horns. So if we zoom in on a bull, let's find you a nice bull. Maybe back there to the right there, you can kind of see half of its head. A little bit more. There we go. To the left a bit. That one at the back, there's a bull. That's now being covered, and I'm trying to show you a very mature bull has no hair almost between its boss. It's like it's joined, fused. The boss being the top of those horns that you can just see now. With the younger bulls, those bosses haven't developed very well yet. There's often still a horn missing there, so to speak, so a lot of hair. And then of course you are looking at a youngster there. So that's not a very mature bull. He is mature, he's adult, he can breed, but not one of the old stalwarts, so to speak. He's still got a bit to go. He's got nice pointy horn tips. As they get very old, their horn tips wear down, become rounder with age, and then when they really are at the end of their life, their horns are almost non-existent. They just have these massive bosses on the top with little stubs on the side, and those are my favorite buffalo. They've survived droughts, they've survived fires, they've survived potentially poaching attempts. They could tell stories for days about lion attacks. Old stalwarts of the bush.
Someone's very much awake and realized that he's not been alone. I think he feels a little bit embarrassed and he's coming over to say hello. Hello, sleepyhead. Aren't you magnificent? Can you see all the capillaries in the ear there? Nice and close. Can you see it? Yes, we see you. Sometimes the bulls can be a bit naughty and they like to show off. See him stretching up. He's got his ears out nice and tall. Look at him. Not aggressive, not angry. So we're just gonna sit here very quietly and see what this bull gets up to.
A very good afternoon to you from and beyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. My name is Dewald, and behind the camera we've got Marcel. And we've just found the two youngsters and mom cheetah that we had this morning that the two males were harassing. and look at that belly. Look at the belly of the mother, and it looks like they actually ate something this afternoon. So it is going very well with them, much better than this morning. You can see she's now just looking around. I think she's looking for a spot to actually lie down and rest. Look at that belly, how low it's hanging. So actually just got an update that they killed an impala not too far from here. So they've obviously now moved away from the carcass to find a spot to lie down. She's giving a few calls every now and then just to make sure the youngsters follow her. But look at that, all the grooming. Oh my goodness, how precious is that? So what she's doing here is she's trying to get all the blood and the smell of the carcass off of these youngsters and trying to clean them so that also the flies and so on don't irritate them, but it's so that they can get rid of the smell. Stacy, my day is made just like yours. I'm so happy we found them and that they are all doing very, very well. And they've got full bellies, so I'm sure this female cheetah is very, very happy. And they keep on looking and listening to the left-hand side here. She's very wary of what's going on around her. It's quite a dense area, so she has to listen out for any sounds that's unfamiliar and so on. And like I said, she is looking for a spot to maybe lie down and rest. I can hear the youngsters are calling, and she's also calling. I wonder if they can maybe hear something in the distance. So remember, this is a female that lost one of her cubs. So there was 3 cubs, but it's been at least 48 hours since anyone has seen the 3rd cub. So it might be that she's still calling and the youngsters are still calling to see if they can maybe find the other youngster. I think we are going to stick around for now and maybe follow her until she finds a spot to settle down.
What you're seeing here is a beautiful green thorn tree. Hi everyone, my name is Mike. Behind the camera we've got Seb, and welcome to Pridelands Conservancy. And I've stopped here now just to show you we're actually on the hunt for some elephants. We're looking for some elephants, and on the way I saw this tree which is called a greenthorn torchwood. And it's called a greenthorn quite simply because it's got these green thorns and it has a fruit that yields a seed with a very high quality fruit oil, which was used to make torches because it burns with a very bright clear flame. Now what's interesting about this tree is that it is browsed and utilized quite a lot by elephants and other animals, but where elephants normally can destroy trees quite easily by ring barking them, you'll notice this tree here has got what's called a fluted trunk, which means that it's got a trunk which undulates and has waves in it. That means an elephant's tusks can't get deep into these grooves and actually take the bark off the whole ring of the tree, which means the tree will survive normally being browsed upon to a certain extent. This is not a very huge one, so it could still be pushed over and destroyed by an elephant, but in some areas, especially where there's sandy soils close to coastal regions, these trees can be absolutely monumental with huge canopies and crowns. Far too big for elephants to push over. And so that fluted trunk helps them to stop being ring-barked. Now, I can't find any seeds underneath this one, but the seeds are edible. In certain parts of East Africa, there's a slightly different species, this is Balanites mawamii. There's a Balanites aegyptica in East Africa, which is also known as the desert date, because the fruits of this thing looks just like a date, and actually tastes not so dissimilar, if not as sweet as commercial dates that you eat. It's got a thin flesh, and inside that is where you'll get the seed from, which you can crush into the oil. It's an absolutely awesome tree. When you're next out on safari, look out for it, because it's really, really spectacular. Alright, and what you can see here is this crown. As you can see, it's got lots and lots and lots of thorns all over it. Can you see that? So that means often you'll even find birds' nests in there, in amongst these thorns, because they can use the thorns to protect themselves. Right, so what I'm going to do now is actually get back on the car. We just heard, Seb and I, the sound of some elephants in the distance over there. So we're going to head over there and see if we can actually find those elephants. They came and drank at the waterhole at camp a bit earlier today. We call them too thirsty elephants because they always seem to come at 2:30, just before we start the show, and they drink in the mud wall and then they head off. So what we're going to do is go and see if we can find them now, what they're up to. It's a nice hot day. If really, really windy, it's at least quite warm. At least it's not a freezing cold day. And yeah, they might well come back to the waterhole a little bit later, which would be great.
This is incredible. This bull will not leave us. He's about a meter away from the car. He's not shown any signs of aggression, but he just won't leave us. He's just so interested in us. Very gentle. Very curious. Craig and I have made a new friend. This bull is just about 1 meter away from the car, and he just won't leave. He's been here for about 15 minutes. Excuse the back of the car and the he's so close. Hey, boy. You just want all the attention, don't you? He's a big boy. But I can assure you, everyone, he's not shown any signs of aggression. And I'm just going to continue to keep talking for now so that my voice doesn't scare him. It just stays the same. Hey, boy. He's younger than the other bull. I think he's just very curious. We don't have anything for you, I'm afraid. I ate all my strawberries. I'm only teasing, we don't feed the animals here. Hey. Hey, hey, hey. Yes, you're on camera. But really, the tail's swishing from side to side. He's relaxed. He keeps putting his head down. Friend. I feel like he's still falling asleep. His eyes are swimming in his eye sockets. Susan, he is. I think he's older. He's definitely younger than the other bull, but he's an older bull. And therefore, once they get a little bit older, plus 40 years, we start to call them gentlemen. And that's because they've become accustomed to the testosterone pumping through their veins. They understand how to handle must. They understand how to navigate the landscape. And they do. They become gentlemen. And I think we have one here, Susan. He's got his back leg resting on his other back leg. He's completely relaxed. He just won't leave us. He's just enjoying the camera time, I think. You see, look at his back legs. He's just chilling. Just hanging. Social distancing, no. He's listening. He's always listening to us. Oh, well. Craig, I hope we've got enough room on the back there for him to jump on. I don't think he's going to go anywhere, so we're going to sit tight and watch.
So we've just managed to find these wild dogs we had this morning in almost exactly the same position. I think the only thing that's changed is they've moved from a patch of shade that wasn't so good to a patch of shade that they're all comfortable with, and they're all resting, completely different behavior to what they were behaving like this morning. But you never know, it's only a matter of time until something happens. I think the only thing that, the most constant thing at least that's moving are those massive ears that are flicking when there's an insect that disturbs them. And the whole pack is still looking really, really nice and full. And they've got those big swollen bellies, so they might not even need to, or feel the need to get up and try and hunt. It's always so exciting to see these wild dogs, because it's something that we don't get to see very often, and 9 times out of 10 it's dogs that are flashing across the road and you get to follow them for several minutes, but you don't get to see them in the shade resting and sleeping a lot of the time. So it is very, very cool to see. See those beautiful white tips to the end of the tail as they flick from side to side. Also one of the ways to get rid of ticks and fly, or not ticks, but more flies. And just for me, I think so Crafty, if everything goes according to plan, they will have a litter every year. So within this pack there will be an alpha female and an alpha male, and they're the only two that breed. And they'll mate, and it's usually between May, June, July, sometimes into August, maybe even a little bit before May. April, May, June, somewhere around there, it tends to be the peak breeding season. And it tends to correlate exactly in the impala's rutting season. So when those big rams are distracted with fighting with one another, they become quite easy targets. So it becomes quite easy to provide meals for the pack. The female will go into a termite mound with a nice burrow in, and she will give birth to pups. And it will be, the litters vary in size. I mean, I think the average size you could say would be between 6 and 10, but you can get a lot more. So I was mentioning this morning that on this reserve about 3 years ago, there was a pack of 17 that was born. And then last year, there was only, or 2 years ago actually, there was only a pack of 4 that were born into the litter. And so it does vary a lot. But essentially what will happen is when those yearlings get to the age of around a year or so, maybe a bit closer to 2 years, they'll tend to separate from the pack, whether it be most of the males, sometimes it might even be the females that move off, and then they go off to try and start their own pack. And so that's the interesting thing about this group, is that we think it could be 2 different packs that have recently joined together. So Rosalind, wild dogs, because they, especially at this time of year, if they do have a den and they need to provide for the litter, they'll hunt, if not once a day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what they catch. Because these wild dogs must have eaten something today, and they must have eaten something rather big, I would imagine that would be enough for them. So they might only try and hunt maybe nice and early on in the morning. What helps is that they've got the moon, and so the moon will act as extra light for them to move around very, very early. And so sometimes, I mean, they'll need to hunt a lot more regularly depending on what time of year it is. But now it seems like the hunt that they made this morning might be sufficient for the pack for today. It also just depends on what they catch, I guess. Yeah, Flash, that's what I was saying a bit earlier. I mean, they usually, when you see them, it's action-packed and we're racing around trying to keep up with them. So to see them nice and settled down is really cool. And then it also just, I mean, as exciting as it is following them, this just lets you appreciate them and lets you look at the colors of them and the patterning. So that's why I thought it would be nice to just sit here for some time and just spend some time with them. And hopefully we get to see them up where we get to see how the goldens and the blacks and all of the whites work together within the coat of the wild dog. And so they're resting for now, but things could change in an instant. It could, I mean, there could be a herd of impalas that triggers a movement. There could be a hyena that they want to try and chase off. And so that's why it's really cool just to sit here and wait. And we'll wait as long as we can, and basically until they get up and move. So what we'll be waiting for is, I guess, a little bit like cats. You'll see the head up, you'll see one or two of them looking up, and then they'll bounce off the energy of one another. And when they initiate getting moving, everything gets very, very exciting. So there's lots and lots of movement, lots of noise, and that's exactly what I'm hoping to show you.
Still watching, we managed to find these elephants. They were not far from where we heard the sound. This is a young bull who's feeding just behind little bushes a little ways from the road. Very, very relaxed guy. But one of the elephants that actually was approaching the herd early this morning, which caused a bit of trouble. So he's not particularly aggressive, but he is getting to that age now where he's probably interested in the females. And so he is definitely not wanted by some of the females that are coming into Eastrust for the very first time. And because he's quite large, he can push them around and cause all sorts of mayhem, which he did. He caused concern, but he's pretty chilled now. There's no females around. I mean, the herd with the females, they're still shadowing them, but they're quite a distance away. We can just see them in the far, far distance. He's just feeding on this dry scrub and brush, as you can see here, just underneath the fallen over, what looks like a fallen over knobthorn. It's amazing how they can push their massive bodies underneath these shrubs with their trunk to get at whatever is there that is still relatively nutritious. See how he puts that trunk directly into the little thicket and smells and feels the grasses and wraps it with his trunk. Pulls it up into his mouth, just little small mouthfuls at a time, because there's not too much delicious stuff left in it. Welcome back, SABC viewers. We managed to find those elephants that were making that noise just in the distance, and it was a couple of elephant bulls following a herd. As you can see here, it's feeding on some dry stuff. And we were just looking at how delicately it maneuvers its trunk in order to get at whatever stuff it can reach underneath that fallen tree. So he's probably going to go around to the other side of that little thicket, Try and see what, or not, or he's just going to go straight towards. Stacey, that's a great question. How much does an elephant eat? Well, an elephant eats as much as it needs to eat. They do eat a lot of food. This is not a very huge elephant. I'm just going to stop here so we can maybe see what he sticks his trunk into. But Stacey, maybe a very huge elephant that weighs 5 or 6 tons might eat 200 kilograms of food a day, maybe even 300 kilograms of food a day. And when the food is dry like this, they have to eat constantly. So this elephant is going to be on the move all the time. Smaller elephants eat less, and of course, when the food is very, very nutritious and green during the spring or the summer, you might find that the elephants eat a little bit less than that 300 kilograms because the food is better quality. But certainly much more, they'll be eating bulk now, much more than they would selectively in the summer. Remember, elephants don't have a great digestive system. They only really digest about 40% of what they eat. So most of it just comes out the other side, completely wasted, but good for the soil. So we love elephants.
Now you've heard how much elephants eat. Now I'm going to show you how they eat. This here is a molar from an elephant. Now it's a very unique molar. It's a tooth, and elephants during their lifetime actually have 6 molars. 6 molars that come in on either jaw, either side throughout their lifetime. And this molar's from a young elephant, not the bull that we just had, I can assure you. This is a very, very old tooth that we had permission to have. Now I'm just going to turn it a little bit so you can see that it's specialized for their diet. These ridges are called transverse ridges, and they're there to crunch through all the sort of sticks and shrubbery and branches that elephants gnaw on, especially in winter. And the teeth work in a conveyor belt. So the molars pop up at the back of the jaw and they slowly move forward to the front of the jaw. Now I'm just going to put my finger here and you can see how small this one is, but it's still very large for a tooth. And the elephant bull is actually just up ahead of us right now. We can see a back view. So he will have many of these molars, but they will be much larger because he is a much larger bull. So we're going to try and stay with him for as long as we can.
Well, it's turning out to be a lovely afternoon by the sounds of it. Some great sightings this afternoon. We haven't left our buffalo just yet. We are still enjoying watching them in their antics, listening to the sounds. Cheryl, you've asked an interesting question. At what age do the buffalo's horns start to curve? I'm trying to find a young buffalo here. The little stubs poking out so that we can have a look at it, but from a very young age that curve is prevalent. You can actually see it. The horns don't come out in a perfectly straight line, so from very young the curves are already starting, but I suppose you'll only really start noticing them at maybe a couple years old when you start seeing that scimitar-like curve start to develop. Only once they reach sexual maturity that you start seeing those deep dips that are so common to buffalo. Lots of flashing horns, dazzling in the sun. Their menacing glares.
A few of the wild dogs have gotten up and moved around, but it seemed like it was just to readjust in the shade. And this one actually put its head in the sun, so that very, very top part of the ears in the golden sunlight. And you might find that could change especially as it's starting to cool down a little bit more, you might find that these wild dogs might move out into a patch of open ground and try and watch well, not watch the sunset, but try and warm up before it starts getting cold for the night. And so there's that big group over there, and then there's one wild dog that's isolated slightly, not too far, but literally only about a couple of meters away in front of the pack. And if we have a close look at her, she's quite interesting, especially the way that she's positioned. We get to look at her belly and look at her very, very closely there. You might see a row of nipples. And so that means that this is the alpha female. And you can see the row of nipples there, but there's no milk. Those teats aren't really big and saggy like a dog's normally is if she's got puppies. And so she might not have had puppies this season, or there's a really good chance that she could have lost them already, especially because it is getting very, very late into the season of where they give birth. And so it's interesting. I mean, she's full, and I think that's from food. I don't think she's pregnant. It would be awesome if she was, but that's been very, very cool. And thank you to the SABC viewers for joining. Remember, we will be on YouTube, so hop over and watch Wild Earth Live, where we'll be going on for another 2 hours. But what an awesome afternoon, and it's only going to get better, so come and join us. Hello to all of our regular viewers, and I'm sure you've been tuned in for the last hour. I'm sure you're up to date with whatever's going on. But just as a reminder, my name's Eric, and there's Owen behind camera. And we found a beautiful pack of wild dogs that we found this morning. We just thought that we would come and sit and wait for them to get up and active. And it's not looking too promising yet, only because all of them are very, very full-bellied after their delicious morning hunt that they managed to catch. But the cool thing is that we know that somewhere around here, at least from this morning, that there were some hyenas. So spat, they do have quite a lot of parasites. They don't get affected by it too much unless there's an overload of parasites. And it's actually one of the main reasons as to why, especially when the youngsters are very, very little in the den, that they decide to move them off. And a lot of it, I think, has got to do with the way that they feed. They eat and they stick their heads right down into the carcass, so their whole faces come up and they're covered in blood. And that just might build up the parasites and lots of feeding material for those little parasites. And so you'll see them quite often scratching. I've seen a couple of wild dogs who've got open wounds that stay open, and they get aggravated where they itch and scratch. But most of the time they're pretty tolerant of it, especially natural parasites and mites around the African bush. And you'll see them, I mean, they often will scratch and clean, like I was saying, but they don't really get affected by it. They tend to stay and look quite healthy. They just build up quite a big stench because they don't really clean themselves as effectively as cats might. And so you can often smell them way before you see them. If they've been running on the road recently and they might be a few hundred meters ahead of you, you'll catch the whiff of them first before you actually see them. So it looks like they're still quite fast asleep in the shade, but as the afternoon gets later and later, there's more and more chance of them getting active, so we're not going anywhere.
So we left those elephants just feeding slowly on the edge of this, the other side of this drainage line just ahead of us. We had reports of some buffaloes that came down to our waterhole to drink. So we're just heading there now to have a look if those buffaloes are still around. Should be some Dagga boys or old buffalo bulls that are often seen at our camp. There should be about 8 of them, including Tungsten. We call him that because his tongue has got a weird thing where it sticks out of his mouth, and it's very cool. He's very recognizable. They're around here somewhere feeding on also this dry stuff. Just like the elephants, they'll have to feed a lot more now than they would normally because the quality of the food that they're eating is not. And they are big animals as well. You know, when your body weighs 600 to 800 kilograms, you need to maintain that by eating a lot of food. And these buffaloes are in their prime, or maybe just past their prime, seeing as they're on their own and not part of a herd. But still very formidable, very powerful animals. So we'll just have to keep looking out. Just over here is where they were spotted. So, wish us luck.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular drive. My name is Lauren. I do have Craig on camera, and we've just stopped to say hello to, well, what used to be our quarantine wildebeest. But you guys have clearly ditched quarantine and moved to greener pastures. It's windy. They're with the impala. I don't know whether the impala follow them or they follow the impala. And just look at the calves, they're so big now, you can it's almost impossible to pick out the calves from the adults. They've grown so much in the space of a year, or a little bit under a year. They stay huddled together, safety in numbers. And they've done well to retain their numbers. When they first gave birth, or at least the females gave birth, we anticipated loss of some of the calves to predators, but they've done very, very well to keep their little herd together. Now that bull elephant was just incredible. He walked off, but that was some heart-stopping moments when that bull came, but he was very relaxed. He just wanted to know what we are and what we're doing. Very curious. Maybe there was a smell that was attracting him, or a sound, or... wonderful moments. But it's actually getting really chilly already. I fear I may have to put my jacket on early today. It's very windy, and I wonder if that's why the wildebeest and impala are down here. We're close to the hyena den. Checked on the hyena den already, everyone, and not active. But I'll keep checking, as I normally do. I want to count 2 of Ribbon's cubs. I only saw 1 last night, which I know caused some concern, so I want to make sure we get back and we see 2. So I think our herd of wildebeest are moving off now. So we're going to bumble on down to the dam and see if we can see anything happening down there. Oh, many of you enjoyed the elephants dive down. It was incredible. They were sleeping, or resting, should I say. And one woke up and walks off, and in the second one, wow. The energy you feel from a bull elephant is like nothing I've ever experienced before. Okay, my search for spots begins. Wish me luck.
Something I never want to experience is a very close encounter with a different member of the Big Five, one of these buffaloes. Elephants are one thing, calm and intelligent. Buffaloes are they're just mean, real mean. But these 2 are pretty relaxed. They're not too far from our camp. They know humans and the smell and the sounds of us pretty well, so they're not too bothered, not too worried about us. Faf, I think that was the name. It's a bit unclear. I think it was Faf. You've asked, what is the lifespan of a buffalo? Well, that's a good question. Depends on what book you read, I suppose. I know Spas. Okay, sorry. Spas, not sass. Spas. Actually, I've spoken to someone who actually breeds buffaloes once before, and he said it's more like 15 years, but a lot of books you'll read will say up to 20 years old. I suppose 20 would be a maximum weight. Oh, got a bit of a fright there. What happened? Was it the oxpecker? Shame, the oxpecker gave him a bit of a fright. But maybe about 15 years old. And if 15 years old is the maximum age of a buffalo in the wild, for example, this one must be somewhere around 13 or 14 years old. It's an old buffalo. You can see some of his fur is starting to come off, especially around the face. You see the horns, the boss on top of its head is getting a bit rounded and shiny. So, it's in the later part of its life. It's a very wise buffalo. Probably survived many encounters with lions and other predators through its tough life. And you can see it's covered in mud there because it's obviously losing its fur, and the mud helps to actually protect it from any bugs or insects that want to bite and sting and suck its blood, and any parasites like ticks. Very cool buffaloes, very powerful animals. Don't get on the wrong side of them.
So this is exactly what we were hoping to see, is a hyena rock up to these wild dogs, and this hyena's not that interested actually. Maybe it doesn't want to mess with them. What's so funny is these wild dogs saw the hyena coming and they hadn't reacted at all. But he's literally just going to walk straight past them. And he'll keep doing this. So I don't know if it's a she or a he, but it will basically just keep watching the wild dogs to try and catch them on the move, and he'll do all his best to try and follow the rest of the pack as they're moving around because they are so successful. And I think what it could have been doing was just sniffing down on the grass, looking for any droppings of these wild dogs. So Ava, you are only 8 years old and you're asking how many wild dogs there are. We can actually count them for you. So there's that nice one that's showing itself with its big full belly facing towards us. That's 1. Then we can see the ears on the left hand side. That's 2. That's 3 right next to the bum of the other one. That's 4. That's 5, the one with the head showing us. And then 6. And 7, there you go. So there are 7. That's cool, yeah. So Ava, there's 7 in this pack, and it's a pack of wild dogs that we're actually not too sure about. We are still trying to figure out exactly where and who and how and where they've come from. But that hyena's actually just come back into the mix, and it looks like it's coming a bit closer. It's going to keep its distance though. It looks like it's a young hyena, so it's not going to mess around too much with these wild dogs. But also see if you can look at the grass around it. The grass is blowing straight to the hyena, which means the wild dog's scent is getting pushed towards it. And a lot of the time when these hyenas are following the wild dogs, they lose sight of them and they literally just follow on the scent trail. And so they try and use the wind as much as they can. And those big, strong, powerful noses. So Claire, they do have a unique way of calling, and I wouldn't call it howling. I actually don't know if there is a technical name for it. But to me, it almost, like, in some sort of way, it's crossed between a wolf and a truck reversing. And so they've got a very low pitched, almost beeping sound that they call. So they'll go whoop, 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 whoop. Something like that. Not quite. I'm not the best wild dog impersonator. So that's what they'll use to contact call and to try and find one another. So if this pack of wild dogs happen to get up and they moved and they're hunting, sometimes, well not sometimes, well quite a lot of the time actually, they'll split up And the way that they find each other is by calling. See? And look at this hyena. You can see it's quite young. Look at the back or the feet. And the ankles is very dark still. So now it's interesting because now the wind has shifted. Or not, the wind hasn't shifted. It does look like it, Guard Monkey, that the hyena's got a bone to pick with him. And interestingly, on its back leg, can you see on its left leg just where the tail starts to change color to black? I don't know if you saw that, we won't see it anymore. But there was a big round circle that looked like an old scab. That could very well have been from wild dogs. And this hyena could have tried to rush in to try and steal the carcass. And because these dogs work so well together, they would have gone after that hyena in that exact same spot, and they would have been nipping at it. We might get quite a cool frame with the wild dog and the hyena in the same shot. It's literally done a 360-degree circle around the wild dogs now, and no response from the wild dogs. Getting braver. See, one wild dog's just picked up its head. Two wild dogs have just picked up their head. 3, 4 now. As they see it moving away, they probably consider it not to be too much of a threat. And it's just something that wild dogs have to tolerate. They can't chase away every single hyena that they see, otherwise they'll spend their whole life chasing the hyenas and they won't do anything else. And so, these hyenas won't pester them if there's no food. The wild dogs know that. And so instead of wasting their energy chasing constantly these hyenas away, they'll rather just rest and save it for when they really need to work together and chase the hyenas off. Liz, it does look like it's looking for trouble, and I think it's just being young and explorative and just trying to test its boundaries. I would love to see what would happen if one of the wild dogs decided to get up. I think its behavior would change in an instant. That's beautiful. The one in the front has just picked up its head. So, Yogesh, another good question. Hyenas, it depends really on where they are and what they're up to. In this area, because there's wild dogs, there's lions, there's leopards, there's enough predators for them to be able to not have to hunt themselves. So I'd say the majority of the time within the area that we operate on Ngala, hyenas might scavenge more than they hunt. If there's an area where there's less predators, or there's a higher density of hyena than anything else, you might find that they spend more time hunting a lot than actually scavenging, because they just don't have other predators to move towards. Look, she's up, big stretch. Look at her walking into the sunlight. It might just be to go to a toilet break. Yeah, she is so big. And I think, I was saying, like, maybe she could be pregnant, but I don't think so, because there's just no milk in those teats. So they seem pretty happy resting here. There's a water hole not too far away that I want to quickly check, just to see if we see anything interesting. And then I'm going to come back here and wait for them to get active.
So the two buffaloes are just slowly moving along this drainage line. As you can see, it's quite a thickly vegetated area, which is what they want, because they're, going to be able to feed on whatever's in there. Now we just got a buffalo bum. But what an impressive bum it is. Very muscular. Would that we could all have a bum as muscular as that. Maybe not as covered in mud, though, I suppose. Well, yes, there's powerful animals. There's a lot of muscle all over a buffalo, and that's what makes them so formidable. Because when they feel threatened, especially these old buffalo bulls, they will literally just charge at whatever they can find. Oh, there you go. Bit of a view there. Okay, now you can see a buffalo standing next to what is a giant Balanites tree. One of the big Balanites that I was talking about earlier. Maybe not even as big as they can get, but still pretty darn big. You can just see the tents in the background. Ooh, Sophie, 10 out of 10 bum rate. I love it. I would have given it an 11, to be honest. I mean, I think he works out every day. Never skips a leg day, that one. And so they're walking right past our camp. I hope the students are aware of, well, in fact, they are aware of them. They are the ones that let us know that they had seen 2 buffaloes. I have to be very careful. They're looking into the camp every now and again. I'm sure they see movement of people here and there. But as I mentioned earlier, these buffaloes, they know the camp quite well. They smell the people, they hear the sounds. They know full well that we're there, and they still choose to walk through the camp. So this one, where the other buffalo works on his legs all day long, this one looks like it's been working on shoulders. Look at that thing. What a mean-looking buffalo. Very powerful. Holy moly, that's a great question. The impact of a buffalo's headbutt is, I mean, powerful enough to absolutely cause major concern to most human beings. I'm not going to lie, I would not be tangling with the buffalo head-to-head. HB, I think... So I've seen videos before of buffaloes literally lifting a car up off of the ground, and I've seen buffaloes hitting each other head on. And sometimes you literally can see them hit each other, and consider they weigh 800 kilograms each, let's say a big buffalo bull. They hit each other, and there's this moment where they step back and they're like stunned a bit, and then they slam each other again. And, you know, so powerful that I've seen them actually knock another buffalo onto its side and then actually start goring that buffalo. So it's pretty incredible. Suffice to say, on the vehicle that we're in right now, this Land Rover, I think if the buffalo really wanted to, it could probably lift this Land Rover up off of its two wheels at least. That's how powerful they are. I mean, that neck, shoulders, legs, everything about the front half of the buffalo is just designed for power, and the back legs to push. So, I mean, I've never seen them running from a long distance away like you see sometimes sheep rams doing, but certainly they'll rear up and slam into each other at quite a pace. HP, I wouldn't like you to try it, and I certainly am not going to try and get into a tussle with one. Many buffaloes have killed lions even as they hunt. That's how powerful these creatures are. But they've moved now into a very thick area, so what I'm going to do is keep us moving to see what else we can find along this drainage line. It seems like most of the animals on this hot and windy day have gone into the low-lying shady areas in order to stay away from this wind and the heat. So let's hope that we can find a few more critters here and there. These buffaloes are disappearing basically into our camp. Probably not a great thing for them to be doing, but when a buffalo decides it wants to go somewhere, there's not much that's going to stop it, to be honest. We just hope that we all get out the way. I remember once in the northern part of Kruger Park doing a trail when I was still a student, actually, being on a trail, and we were in some mapanis. I don't know if any of you have been into a mapani woodland before. There's lots of these short mapanis, and when they're full of leaves, it's like you can't see anything. And we were just passing through this little short section, and all of a sardine, there was a whole herd of buffaloes that came out of nowhere. And it was absolutely terrifying having these things rushing past us, not knowing where we were. I don't want to repeat that experience. But, no.
I have failed once again to get the woolly neck stork on camera, but we have managed to find a hammerkop. A hammerhead, not the shark, the bird. Resting, actually. Normally these birds are quite active, especially when they're around water bodies. But this one's been remarkably still. Closely related to the herons, other water birds. They're all aquatic birds. And this pan is slowly drying up. This time last year, this pan at Twin Dams...
Good afternoon, station.
Oh, good afternoon to you too. Sorry about that. This pan was dry. Completely dried up. So, because winter's been, well, very giving this year, there's still water, but it's slowly starting to go. But it's still enough water to contain lots of life, lots of delicious aquatic organisms for this hammerkop. frogs, tadpoles in summer, small fish, anywhere water is available, and aquatic insects. That's what you'll find the hammerkop feeding on. So I'm going to sit on this damn wall and decide which direction I'm going to go to look for my spots.
Welcome again to and Beyond Phinna Private Game Reserve. We've gone around to a watering hole not too far away where we actually saw the cheetah with the 2 cubs earlier, and we've now come across a cheetah with 2 different cubs. So this you can see they don't have that fluffy fur, or they do still have the fluffy fur, but not the white fur on their necks like the other cheetah cubs do. And you can see this female, she looks quite different to the one we saw earlier. A much blacker face, but it looks like they've caught a small Inyala. It's not a fully grown Inyala, so probably a little bit easier to take down than the rest. I wonder if she was waiting in the long grass here, and when this Inyala came down to drink some water, she pounced on it. Look, this youngster's also coming back to feed a little bit more. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's Eduardo, it does look like lipstick. Oh, look at that youngster just went straight where mom was feeding, so obviously it's a nice soft piece of carcass there, and he's actually putting his face in pretty deeply. Look how beautiful that female is. Also a bit of lipstick, like you said, Eduardo. I'm getting right in there. So the youngsters are probably still learning where to start feeding and everything like that, and relying on mom to kind of open everything for them. See how she's like sitting upright now, just scanning around, because with these 2 youngsters and obviously with her carcass, she has to be very, very cautious of what's going on around her. I'm sure the sound of catching this Inyala could have made quite a sound. And all that down, and usually sit upright and keep a lookout every now and then. This youngster on the left hand side of the carcass, you can almost see he's almost falling asleep. I think we are gonna sit here and keep on watching them feed, and we'll see what happens after they are done.
No, you're not seeing a lock of a share's hair. What you're seeing is the tail of a giraffe. And very interestingly, we noticed this female giraffe, who looks very pregnant, has got scratches all over her legs, very deep-looking scratches. They look like claw marks, if you ask me. Perhaps this giraffe did encounter some lions in her younger years, but as you can see, she's got a nice big round belly. She's looking like she is a little pregnant. And yeah, gorgeous afternoon light. We didn't have to travel far to find more critters. In fact, these are only about 100 meters away from where those buffalo were, which is great news for us. And we noticed another thing on the neck of these giraffes. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever noticed this before in a giraffe, but I mean, it could be some scratch marks from the same encounter if those are lion scratch marks, and these could be, you know, some scarring, that like rough fur that you can see there. But I'm also wondering if it's not maybe a little bit of papillomavirus. I know that giraffes are quite susceptible to papillomavirus, and it creates these big scars, and it looks like scabby wounds all over their necks. Now, the virus itself doesn't really cause much concern. It's the scratching of the itchy, you know, scabs which causes problems and secondary infections. And of course, if you've got a weakened immune system, if this giraffe was struggling with nutrition or having, for example, this calf developing in its belly, in its womb, I should say, could be contributing to a loss of condition. It's interesting. I don't know. Have any of you ever seen giraffes with papillomavirus before? Big, it almost looks like bark growing on the side of the neck of a giraffe. I've seen it quite a number of times. I know it's quite prevalent in the Kruger National Park. So the giraffes, and in fact, very, very contagious as well. You have seen it on the show. Oh, that's cool. So you do know what this is. But yeah, I wonder if that's not the beginnings of a little papillomavirus outbreak on this giraffe due to the low nutrition. And there's a young male that you can see. So you can see its horns, the ossicones on top of its head, are nice and smooth, probably from fighting and sparring with other males. It's not a huge male giraffe, not yet anyway, but certainly in great condition. And this one does not have any signs of that weird scarring and papilloma potential, which is really cool. Glad that he's looking healthy. Victor, I'm not sure how long exactly is a giraffe neck, but if I look at a giraffe, if this male giraffe is 5 meters tall, let's say, a very tall giraffe is about 5 meters tall, 5.5 maybe, and the neck is probably half of the height, like a complete half of the height. So let's say probably, over 2 meters, maybe 2.5 meters at its full extension. That's pretty crazy, right? For a giraffe, for an animal to have a 2.5 meter neck. That's like, almost 2 people standing on each other's shoulders. That's how long the neck is. Yeah. But I have to look up the exact measurements. I've never really looked up the exact measurements. I just know that a male giraffe at its full extension, if it's a very big one, is about 5.5 meters tall. A good question, though. Now you can see those beautiful white flashing ears and the white flanks as well. Such a stark contrast. We haven't seen TDH for a while, that very dark giraffe. I wonder where he is. Moonbeam. A giraffe scratches itself, on anything it can find, really. So this small tree that it's eating from is a tambuti, but if it was maybe a thorn tree, like a knob thorn or a sickle bush, or even this tambuti, it might do it. It will actually literally walk its body directly over that whole tree in order to scratch its undersides where it couldn't reach. Now, they're surprisingly flexible. That neck, it can groom its own side, but, for example, parts of its neck and parts of its face, it will literally rub it against trees and stumps, like that leadwood over there. It might actually do it. Oh, never mind. No, it's not going to. Or maybe it will. No. It's going to do the opposite of what I say. But they'll sometimes rub themselves on these dead trees and branches to scratch their face. It's actually really cool when you watch them doing it. So yeah. Anything they can find, really. I've even seen them scratching their feet. I've even seen them scratching their feet before on, small stumps and stuff. So when you've got an itch, you've got to scratch it, right? And especially if you can't reach it, it must be very frustrating. Imagine having an itch that you just can't reach, sometimes in the middle of your back. You got to go and scratch it against something. Linda, the gestation period of a giraffe is about 15 months. So just under a year and a half. It's a very long gestation period, but not so long when you consider how huge a giraffe is. The human gestation period is, 9 months? And so, a giraffe is significantly larger than a human, and so is its baby. But, you'd expect it to be a bit longer for such a huge animal. But look how round it is. That's amazing. Now we get to see just how round the giraffe is. Look how interesting it is. Giraffes lift up both the legs on one side of its body at the same time, and then lift up the legs on the other side of the body when they walk. It's not opposites like many animals. It's literally both right legs, then both left legs. And when they walk, especially if you're behind them, you'll notice their neck sways from left to right to counterbalance the fact that both of their legs are off the ground. It's the oddest thing. I don't know how it adapted itself that way. Oh, it's getting a fright. I think the oxpeckers are bothering that giraffe. Well, these giraffes are going to walk off into the sunset, into the distance where there's some... Oh, I think this dusty, windy day is starting to get right up in my lungs. I can't scratch in there, unfortunately. I'll just have to have a drink, which I will do in a moment. But yes, those giraffes are moving off into the drainage line. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep going. This drainage line seems to be working quite well for us. We have leopard tracks earlier this morning. Maybe as it cools down and the sun goes down a bit more, we'll get lucky enough to find a little spotted cat. I keep saying it. I shouldn't even mention them. I don't think they actually exist. Anyone who says they've seen a leopard before was joking.
Wild Earth relies on support from viewers like you to carry on broadcasting our daily live shows. A small donation goes a long way in helping us on our mission to connect the world with nature. Please visit our support page to see how you can help and become part of the Wild Earth family.
So as you can see, we've temporarily left those wild dogs, and like I was mentioning, I really wanted to get down towards the waterhole to see if there was anything going on there. And the waterhole's now past us on the left. We went and we were mostly looking for tracks of the Pride of Lions that we actually wanted to try and look for this morning, and we didn't see anything significant, and so we thought we might as well just take a nice slow drive back up towards those wild dogs. And it actually helps us out a little bit, because now we get to get a picture of the lay of the land and where the animals are in relation to those wild dogs. So we haven't seen anything yet, so we know that if these wild dogs come into this area, they're going to have to walk or run quite a long distance until they find their first opportunity. And so it's quite nice to do that, just so we have an idea and we can almost plan what's ahead of us in case these wild dogs do happen to get up and move. So an area like this, because it is so open, would attract things like wildebeest and impalas, maybe even zebras, who would come and rest here in the evenings. And those wild dogs would probably walk into these open areas knowing that, looking for something to try and hunt. Kathy, it's been a long time. I haven't seen a wild dog hunt this whole year, I think. Well, actually, the other day I was tracking a leopard in this area, and we managed to find, or we heard a wild dog catching an impala, and then we found it in the vehicle. But by then it had already been stolen by hyenas. So I haven't seen and followed wild dogs hunting probably in close to a year or so by now. Like I say, it's one of the most exciting things to do. The first kill I ever saw was a pack of 22 wild dogs in the Okavango Delta. We've got a lodge called Anbion Sandibe, and it's just, the Delta is the most perfect place to follow wild dogs, because you've got these big open grasslands, and then you've just got these thickets in the distance with these massive palm trees. And so these wild dogs run from clearing through the thickets to other clearings, just chasing all of these impalas. And we followed them for about 45 minutes, probably one of the longest times I've ever followed wild dogs. And we followed them right at sunset. They managed to catch a nice big impala ram. Otherwise, I think I've seen maybe three or four kills on Ngala, wild dog kills on Ngala, but I'm not including the one we're going to see tonight.
We've came across more elephants. They're everywhere. This is a herd though, a breeding herd. I can see elephants of all sizes, all ages here, and they're feeding. Now I wanted to bring a concept to your attention. So although we're looking at elephants, they're feeding on the vegetation and the grass and the trees. I wanted to see what you all thought of this. I've been reading a sort of new theory by a German, I guess, scientist, and he wrote a beautiful book called The Hidden Life of Trees. And a sort of revolution has been taking place in the understanding of trees recently. And the latest studies actually confirm what a lot of people have suspected when you're talking about a forest. And I know we're not in a forest environment here, but a forest is just a perfect example to sort of explain what I'm going to say. And the scientific studies suggest that trees are far more alert, social, and sophisticated, possibly even intelligent than we ever realized. And as many of you know, I study animal intelligence and animal perception and animal emotions quite extensively. So this has really sort of hooked me, this theory. Because we generally think of trees as just one tree, one marula, one silver cluster leaf, one buffalo thorn, striving as a disconnected loner on its own, striving for water, nutrients, sunlight, and when there's other trees nearby, it's a competition. So the winner is the one that manages to grow the tallest and get all of that sunlight and outcompete the others. It's almost like a battleground. But the new science says that that's not the case. So trees of the same species, let's just say marulas, because I love marulas. All the marulas in an environment are actually communal. And they'll often form alliances with trees of other species. So let's just say marulas and silver cluster leaves. So forests as an ecosystem have actually evolved to sort of live in, well, let's just say cooperative, independent relationships. And they're maintained by the trees through communication. And they have a collective intelligence. And science relates the collective intelligence of trees to the likes of insect colonies. Someone's unhappy. Lots of birds are unhappy. So yes, trees are the foundation of forests, and it's a lot more than what you see. So basically, underground, there's lots of biological pathways that we don't see that allow the forest to behave as a unit, as an organism. And they call this, are you ready? The Wood Wide Web, WWW. Not the World Wide Web. Wood Wide Web. And that is just a sort of nickname for what's actually happening underground, and it's related to intelligence. So basically, all the trees here in front of us, they actually, if they're not too damaged, we're talking about healthy, thriving ecosystems, healthy trees, they're actually all connected to one another underground via fungal networks. And these networks share water, share nutrients, and they also communicate. Can you believe it? These trees are communicating one another. And I think I'm going to reverse to get a better view of the elephants behind us. What do you think, Creed? They'll send signals to one another as well about drought, potential drought, disease that can affect the trees. And they'll completely signal to one another underground through these fungal networks. Just approaching these elephants really slowly. Many of you love that name, the Wood Wide Web. Okay, Craigie, I think we're good here. Oh, I see you. Yes, don't need to shake your head at me, youngster. I do see you. So yes, they'll communicate about drought and disease, and even insect attacks. When the trees are under attack, they'll communicate to one another, and it will be through these underground networks. They'll send and receive messages. And let's just use the example of where we are right now. So in Africa, when a giraffe, I think you've just seen a giraffe, starts chewing on acacia leaves, the trees notice this injury, they notice the injury of the leaves, and they'll send out a distress signal in the form of ethylene gas. And when other trees detect this gas, so neighbouring acacias, they'll start pumping the tannins into their leaves. Pump, pump, pump. The leaves will have far more tannins, which is to try and deter the giraffes from eating the leaves. So it's to try and stop them from damaging further trees. And tannins can actually make various different herbivores very sick, especially kudus. It can kill them if they eat far too much of it. So that's an example of communication above the ground. But under the ground, that's what we're talking about here, and there's a special name for it. It's called the mycorrhizal network. MYCORRHIZAL network. And this is where the theory comes in. The trees are not singular, they're not alone, they're communicating constantly. Someone monkey. Didn't quite get that name, but you're a monkey, and you're seeing it's a sci-fi movie where trees actually release guide monkey. I'm probably still getting that wrong, but the trees release chemicals, and they're all trying to make the humans go crazy. Wow, I've never seen that movie. Please find out the name